Hello and welcome to Down to the Tyre. We are currently in the middle of January. We're very deep into the winter break. So firstly, I hope everyone's doing okay. I hope everyone is coping well with no F1. However, as we know, there's a lot of feeder series stuff to talk about during this time. And so I thought I'd make the most of this. But this episode will be me predicting what I think is going to happen in season 10 of Formula E this year in 2024. So without further ado, let's get into it, and I hope you enjoy. So I thought, first of all, we could go through all of the teams and all of the drivers and just establish who's driving in Formula E this year and who's where. So then when I'm making my predictions, you've got a bit more context behind it. So we will start with Andretti Global, who will have Jake Dennis on their team, who won the championship in 2023. So obviously he's going to be a driver I'm talking about quite a bit in this episode. And he's alongside Norman Nato, who was with Nissan last year, and he has now moved over to Andretti. The next team we have is DS Penske. Now, they have the exact same lineup as last year, Stoffel Vandoorne and John-Eric Verne, both of who are Formula E world champions in the past. So we'll see what happens with them, because unfortunately the DS Penske car did not give them the opportunity to win another world championship in 2023. But we'll see what happens and if the car improves in 2024. Next, we have the ERT Formula E team, which again have the exact same lineup as 2023, except for they've just renamed their team. They were called Neo 333 in 2023, but now they're the ERT Formula E team. Same lineup of Dan Ticktum and Sergio Sette Camara. Next, we have Envision Racing, who will be retaining Sebastian Buemi for 2024. However, Nick Cassidy has left the team, and replacing him will be Robin Frijns, who raced for them between 2018 and 2022. Before taking a year with Abt Cooper last year, he will now be reuniting with the team, which a lot of people are very excited to see. And then we have McLaren, who will be retaining Jake Hughes for a second year, alongside Sam Bird, who will be joining the team to replace René Rast after quite a few years at Jaguar. So it's interesting to see Sam Bird leaving Jaguar and switching to a new team for this year. Next, we have Maserati, who will have Jehan Daruvala driving for them, who was the Mahindra reserve driver in 2023, and he was also on the Formula 2 grid. So that's intriguing to see another Formula 2 driver switching over to Formula E. Obviously, Dan Ticktum did the same a couple of years ago, and Jehan Daruvala is the next driver to make that move. He'll be joined by Maximilian Gunter, who raced for the team in 2023 and is staying with them for 2024. Next, we have Jaguar, who, without giving too much of my predictions away too early in the episode, I will speak about this a bit more later, but they are my team to watch in 2024. They have a full Kiwi lineup of Mitch Evans and Nick Cassidy, both drivers that came so close to the championship in 2023, and I think they're definitely going to be drivers to watch in 2024. Next, we have Abt Cooper, who will be retaining Nico Muller for the 2024 Formula E season, alongside Lucas Di Grassi, who will be rejoining the team after racing for them previously in his Formula E career. And then we have Porsche, who will be keeping the exact same lineup as 2023 with Antonio Felix da Costa and Pascal Wehrlein. Nick de Vries will be making a move back to Formula E after what can be considered an unsuccessful stint in Formula 1 in 2023 with AlphaTauri. He will be joining Mahindra alongside Eduardo Mortara, who moves from Maserati. And finally, we have the Nissan Formula E team, who will be retaining Sasha Fenestras for 2024 alongside Oliver Rowland, who will be joining the team. Now we've got all of the drivers and teams out the way. We know who's driving on the grid and we know where they're driving. Now I'm going to make some predictions. Now, when I did my Formula 1 video, I split it into different categories, and I'm going to do the same here. I'm going to talk about 3 drivers who I think are drivers to watch, 3 teams who I think are teams to watch, 3 teams that I think are going to have a poor year in Formula E this year, and then 3 drivers who I think are going to have a poor year in Formula E this year. So without further ado, let's get into it. I'm going to talk about the 3 drivers who I think are going to be the best in Formula E this year. And the first 2 I'm going to group together because they are racing for the same team. I spoke about them earlier in this episode and said I thought they were going to be drivers to watch, and that's Mitch Evans and Nick Cassidy. Nick Cassidy was P2 in the 2023 Formula E season, and Mitch Evans was P3. So that explains why I think they're drivers to watch. They both did very well in 2023. And I think they're both going to do very well in 2024 as well. Nick Cassidy is moving over from Envision to Jaguar. Mitch Evans was already at Jaguar and he's staying with the team. And I think both of them as teammates are going to be really pushing each other to do as well as they can. So I think both of them are probably going to be competing for the championship again after a very successful 2023 where they came so close. Nick Cassidy had 199 points while Mitch Evans had 197, and Jake Dennis, who was the championship leader, finished on 229 points. So it was all relatively close, and all of the drivers that I've just mentioned got multiple wins throughout the season. It was actually Nick Cassidy and Mitch Evans who both got more wins throughout the season than Jake Dennis, who actually won the championship. But we all know consistency wins championships, not the number of wins. So yeah, that explains that. But I do think Nick Cassidy and Mitch Evans, with the amount of wins that they got in 2023, stands such a good chance going into 2024. And my other driver to watch is, who I've already mentioned in this clip, Jake Dennis. I think he is definitely one to watch. Obviously, he won the championship in 2023. He's staying with Andretti, the team who he won the championship with, for 2024. I think he's going to want to retain his title. And I know it's basic. I've basically just picked the top 3 from the 2023 season as my 3 drivers to watch for 2024. But I genuinely just do think they are going to be the best 3 drivers. And a lot of people might be questioning why I've not put Nyck de Vries in there, but I simply don't think Mahindra are going to perform. So that's why I don't think Nyck de Vries is going to be up there. But Jake Dennis, Nick Cassidy and Mitch Evans, I think, are going to be 3 drivers who is definitely worth keeping an eye on. So the next segment of this podcast is going to be the teams I think you should keep an eye on in 2024 in Formula E. And since I've picked both of their drivers as drivers to watch, I think it comes with no surprise that I'm going to put Jaguar as my team to watch in Formula E in 2024. I just simply think Jaguar have the strongest lineup on the Formula E grid. They've got 2 Kiwis. It's, Kiwis are good at motorsport. What can I say? Marcus Armstrong in IndyCar, he's doing great as well. Mitch Evans, Nick Cassidy, the Kiwis are taking over. And am I complaining? Not at all. So I think it's going to be a very Kiwi year in Formula E. And I think Mitch Evans, Nick Cassidy, you can't get a better lineup than that. I'm not even from New Zealand, so you can't even say I'm biased here because I'm from the UK. No British bias here, just Kiwi bias, even though I've never even been to New Zealand. And I'm probably, geographically as far from New Zealand as you can get being in the UK. But hey, I just think that lineup is stunning. I think it's by far the best lineup on the grid. The 2 strongest drivers at the moment. I think they're both in their primes, in the peaks of their career. Could we get a Brosades situation? I don't know. I don't think they'll beef. I think they'll be respectful to each other. I think they'll be competitive with each other, but I think they will keep it respectful. So I think Jaguar have got to be a team to watch because their lineup is stunning. As the defending Formula E world champion team, with Jake Dennis winning for them last year, I think Andretti have got to be my second team to watch. They've got Norman Natter, who is another brilliant driver, alongside retaining Jake Dennis for the 2024 season. I think Andretti are an incredibly successful team. They always do pretty well in Formula E. They've got a very talented lineup. They know what they're doing. 2023 proved that they know what they're doing. And I just think they're going to continue doing what they do well, which is winning championships and winning races. So I think Andretti are going to be my second team to watch in Formula E. Now, my third team to watch in Formula E was a bit of a more difficult decision. You've got someone like Porsche, who have such a strong lineup with Antonio Felix da Costa and Pascal Wehrlein. I think both of them are insanely talented drivers. Again, probably the second strongest pairing on the Formula E grid. Same as last year, but still so solid. McLaren are another one that I'm really tempted to say, because I think last year they were getting into their groove. They were figuring it out. They were new to Formula E, so they had a lot of things to get used to, things to adapt to, which other teams didn't have. And they still did well. So I think maybe McLaren could have a year where they have really just mastered everything. They know what they're doing. They figured it all out. They're on top of it. So it could be McLaren. Envision are also up there as well. They've got Robin Frijns back. They've got Sebastian Buemi. They were vice champions in 2023 with Nick Cassidy. This is a tough decision. You know what? I think I'm going to have to go with McLaren. It could be a risky prediction because they obviously weren't up there like competing for the championship in 2023. And I don't think they will win the championship in 2024. But I do just think they probably had a lot of teething issues in 2023 where they were just like getting used to the series, adapting to it, figuring things out, figuring out the best way to do things. And I just think in 2024 they're going to have really nailed that. And I think they're going to have a really good year. They've got Sam Bird, who is incredibly experienced. They've got Jake Hughes, who had a brilliant 2023. And anyone who's seen his feeder series career knows that he's a good driver, even if he wasn't always dealt the best hands during his junior career. But yeah, I'm going to go with McLaren as my third and final team to watch for 2024 in Formula E. And now we are on to drivers who I think are going to struggle this year. Now, I always feel bad doing these predictions. I don't want to, put bad fortune on anyone. I don't want to jinx anyone into doing badly. But maybe it could have the reverse jinx effect, and me saying this could make these drivers do really well. So we'll see. Fingers crossed. But my first one is Sergio Sette Camara. Now, he was P20 in 2023, which was the lowest out of all of the drivers who did the full season. Obviously, there were some drivers who missed rounds, who only did half the season, who only did a few rounds, etc. But Sergio Sette Camara was the lowest of the ones who did do every single race. And he's with the same team again, and that makes me struggle to think that it's going to improve, unfortunately. So based on last year, purely, I don't think he's a bad driver, but just based on his results last year and just, I feel bad putting any driver on my, drivers that I don't think are going to do very well list, but I have to put Sergio Sette Camara. I'm sorry, Sergio. The next driver I'm going to say is actually for the exact same reason as I've put Sergio Sette Camara on the list, and that is Nico Muller. He was P19 in 2023. He was only actually 1 point ahead of Sergio Sette Camara. So yeah, not a great 2023. He was with Abt Cupra, who he is driving for again in 2024. So it's kind of the same concept. Both of them had a very poor 2023. Both of them are staying with the same teams in 2024. I just don't really see either of those teams making much progression in 2024. So yeah, that's kind of my reasoning. Same theory behind both. I just don't see it improving that much. And I do think that Nico Muller is probably going to be a driver who won't have many memorable performances. So he's my second driver who I think is going to struggle in 2024. And finally, I am going to pick a driver who perhaps hasn't been the best driver in recent years, but it's a bit of a wild card, I guess, but it's not that much of a wild card based on the fact that he's racing for Abt Cupra, the same team as Nico Muller. I'm going to say Lucas Di Grassi. Now, it's so hard to say a team or driver that's going to struggle in Formula E because sometimes you just get some shocking moments that you just don't see coming, but Abt Cupra were towards the back of the grid for the majority of 2023, and I just kind of see the same thing happening again. I know that Nico Muller and Robin Frijns had that random round in 2023 where they were completely dominating the front row of the grid in qualifying in Berlin. That was crazy. I don't know what even happened there. Still to this day, it was insane. So I know they weren't always absolutely at the back. I don't want to be too harsh on them, but overall, I think it's fair to say that they didn't have that much of a successful 2023. Obviously, that qualifying session was good, but they weren't able to retain those top spots in the actual race. Their car just didn't have the race pace, and they ended up dropping right back down. So yeah, that's kind of my reasoning as to why I think Abt Cupra won't have a brilliant season. And with Lucas di Grassi, he was 15th in 2023. He got P3 in the first race of the entire season, a P7 and a P6 later on, but apart from that, he wasn't in the points. And I don't think a move to Abt Cupra is going to help, unfortunately. So he's going to be my third driver who I think is going to struggle in 2024. Now, the final section in this segment of this episode is the teams that I think are going to struggle. And I think from what I've just said in the driver struggles section, it's obvious that I'm going to say Abt Cupra. They weren't great in 2023. I don't think they're going to be great in 2024. I don't think there's going to be much development there. I don't think it's going to really get much better, unfortunately. So I feel like I've said enough about Abt Cupra at this point. So they're going to be my first team that I think are going to struggle. Another team that I think are going to struggle a bit are the ERT Formula E team, who were formerly Neo 333. Again, it's kind of just because they have been near the back for a couple of years now. I just don't see them making that much of a step forward. These are pretty boring predictions. I'm not making any crazy predictions, but yeah, I don't think either of those are going to have a great season. Now, my final one, I want to say Mahindra have a really good lineup, I think, with Nick De Vries and Eduardo Mortara. I think both drivers are great, but we know Mahindra didn't have a brilliant 2023. They had some very shaky moments in 2023. So I think I'm going to have to say Mahindra as my third and final team struggle of 2024. I do think Eduardo Mortara and Nick De Vries are two very solid drivers, but I think Nick De Vries will probably have to gain some of his confidence back after his 2023 Formula One stint. I think he's going to be, a bit shaken up still from that, and I think he will need some time to kind of just build, back to what he knows. He will have to obviously adapt to the Formula E car again, so it might be a bit shaky at the start, but I do think he will get back into it. I just think he might have to gain some confidence at first, because obviously Formula One really didn't go well, and he just needs to prove to himself that he can drive, which he can. He just needs to believe again, so that might take some time. And then Eduardo Mortara, I mean, he had a very shaky 2023 as well, lots of crashes, lots of bad luck. I do think he's a great driver though, but I just don't back Mahindra to deliver the car that they both need. So that's why they're my third and final team struggle of 2024. And much like my Formula One predictions video, I'm also going to do a top 3 Drivers' Championship prediction and a top 3 Constructors' Championship prediction for Formula E. This is going to be a tricky one. Mainly because I'm going to have to pick between who I think is going to win the championship between Mitch Evans and Nick Cassidy, which is really hard when they're driving the same car. But Nick Cassidy outperformed Mitch Evans in 2023, and I think he might do it again. I'm going to predict that Nick Cassidy is going to win the Formula E Drivers' Championship in 2024. I don't know if I can predict Mitch Evans second, because that's domination, getting the same team as P1 and P2 in the championship. And I just don't know if that kind of domination will happen in Formula E. It's quite rare to see a team completely dominate. You don't get like a Red Bull like in Formula 1, which is really hard. It feels too obvious to say Jake Dennis as P2 in the championship because he won it in 2023, and I don't know if he'll be able to pull off a P2 the year after. But there's no one else who's like, those 3 seem like the top 3 to me. I can't really see anyone else reaching their level. So I'm going to have to say Nick Cassidy P1, Jake Dennis P2, and Mitch Evans P3 again. I could regret that. They could be in any order, really, those top 3, I think. I mean, Pascal Wehrlein was P4 in 2023, and I do think that him and Antonio Felix da Costa in the Porsche are going to be close. But I just think Jaguar with that lineup are just next level. And I do think Jake Dennis is at an absolute peak of his career at the moment. So I'm going to leave that there. I'm overthinking it too much. That's my prediction. So Nick Cassidy P1, Jake Dennis P2, Mitch Evans P3. And I'm not going to overthink it anymore. Now on to my team predictions. Now I'm just looking back at the 2023 standings for the team's championship in Division 1, but obviously they had Nick Cassidy then. So I don't think they'll be up there again now Nick Cassidy has left the team. Even though Franz and Buemi is not a bad lineup, but obviously Nick Cassidy being so good is the reason that they won that championship, the team's championship in 2023. So I'm going to rule Envision out. Jaguar were P2 in 2023, and obviously I've said Mitch Evans and Nick Cassidy throughout this video so many times that I've got to put Jaguar as who I think is going to be the team champion in Formula E in 2024. I've got to. They've got to be P1. Final answer. Now, Andretti were P3 with Jake Dennis obviously winning the entire championship, and they have Norman Nato this year, and I think he's going to do well. So I think I'm going to go with Andretti as P2 overall in the championship. So P1, Jaguar, P2, Andretti. Now, I said McLaren would be a team to watch in 2024, but I don't think they're going to be P3 in the overall team's championship or anything. I just think they're going to be a team to watch in the sense that they are going to make a massive leap forward, and that's going to be really interesting to watch. So I don't think McLaren are going to be P3 in the overall team's championship. They were P8 this year, so obviously to make that jump up to being that high up just would be unrealistic, I think. So even though I said, you know, these three teams are ones that I think you should watch, these three drivers are ones I think you should watch, I don't think necessarily that translates into championships as much. Like, I feel like the predictions are more just people I think will be interesting or will be doing something very different to last year and things like that. So it's definitely not going to be McLaren as P3 overall, but it's a very tough decision. I'm tempted to say Porsche because they're always up there. They were P4 in the team's championship in 2023. I know I've not really highlighted them that much throughout this video, apart from saying that I think they have a really strong lineup with Felix da Costa and Pascal Wehrlein. But I feel like the reason I've not highlighted them that much is I kind of just feel like they're just going to be, you know, at the same level as they were in 2023, which is really good, obviously, P4 in the team's championship. But I don't see them making a leap forward and I don't see them making a leap back. So they're kind of just in that kind of no man's land where they're good, but they're not notable enough for me to highlight. But they're also not bad enough for me to speak about in that sense. So they kind of get lost a bit in the middle. So I am going to take this opportunity to give them a shout out because I do think I've overlooked them a bit throughout this episode. So I think Porsche are going to be P3 in the championship. So Jaguar, Andretti, Porsche. These could age so horribly, but I've said them now and they're on the internet probably forever.